In light of the shooting at Rob's Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, as well as the Buffalo shooting, we're here today in front of the legislative building to demand action. And we want to show a united front. We have hundreds of people registered, moms, students, parents, teachers, community activists, elected officials, all here to either protest or stand in solidarity or speak against gun violence. We believe in the Second Amendment. However, we do not stand for the abuse of this bill, this right. We are here to demand legislation such as upping the age for the purchase of firearms and also reducing access of youth to firearms, especially individuals who may pose a risk to themselves or others. We're all here today to stand for and to demand and to speak up for more effective gun legislations to reduce the number of atrocities that happen across the nation.
Hundreds of people came together today in Mineola to try to put an end to gun violence. News 12's Antoinette Biordi has the very latest for us from Mineola. Antoinette?
Well, Tama, the rally ended here at the Nassau County Legislative Building in Mineola. Hundreds of people were marching, making their voices heard, hoping to pass legislation against with gun laws and to prevent, of course, another mass shooting from happening.
No more silence and gun violence.
They started to march at the Supreme Court building in Mineola. Groups from Moms Demand Action and March for Our Lives, founded by a group of students from Parkland, Florida, with chapters all over the U.S. They're focused on gun violence prevention. Linda Beagle-Schulman, whose son was shot and killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, was also at the rally.
I am begging you, turn your grief, turn your pain, and turn your anger into activism.
The groups here today are pushing for stronger gun laws on the federal level in the wake of recent mass shootings in Uvalde, Texas, and in Buffalo.
They don't want to see dying children anymore. They don't want to be worried about going to the supermarket. They don't want to be worried about going to a place of worship. So I feel it's incredibly important.
Here on Long Island, there have been at least a dozen school violence threats in the past 2 weeks alone. Robert Gaffer of Rockville Center survived the Las Vegas mass shooting in October 2017. He felt the need to be here today. He wants to see federal gun violence prevention laws passed, like raising the age to buy certain guns to 21, banning ghost guns, and passing the red flag law.
We're not gun grabbers. All the laws that are being passed only strengthen the Second Amendment. We're really focused on keeping guns out of the hands of people who actually want to do something violent with them.
Now, some gun advocates that I talked to say they agree background checks need to be properly updated. As for this group who were here marching today, they will join another group of anti-gun violence rallies next weekend on Saturday in Wyandanch. In Mineola, Antoinette Biordi, News 12, Long Island.
What could be a major breakthrough in gun safety. The Senate reaching an agreement, the first of its kind in years. But getting it to the president's desk is not a done deal just yet. News 12 Long Island's Caroline Flynn joining us with more on this. Caroline, what's happening?
Well, exactly what you said. At this point, this is just an agreement, but it's very likely that this will become legislation, and that is because almost a dozen Republicans showed their support for it. Now, we've been out in East Meadow, and we've been speaking with Long Islanders, and many told us they were supportive of this as well, but also thought this really needs to be a jumping off point when it comes to really making sure that our schools, our places of worship, as well as things like our supermarket, are made safe.
After many years of both parties stalling on this issue, I'm glad to see that they are able to make this small step for our safety.
Progress was just what 16-year-old Sabrina was hoping to return home to yesterday after helping to organize the March for Our Lives demonstration in Nassau County.
This agreement, if passed, is is a small step in the right direction.
Over the weekend, lawmakers began steps to draw up legislation on gun control and safety, the likes of which the country hasn't seen in years. It includes a red flag provision aimed at helping states create laws that would help keep weapons out of the hands of those courts deem a threat to themselves or others. A thorough review process involving local law enforcement for anyone under 21 looking to own a gun, as well as funding for school resource officers and mental health programs. Another thing that was important to the Syosset High School junior, whose best friend died by suicide.
She had been combating depression, and she had a lot of problems at home, and she should not have had access to the weapon that was at home and ultimately taken her life.
This Floral Park father shared similar concerns.
My son is mentally ill. So with that said, I wouldn't want to see a firearm in his hand. More should be done.
For Guo, she is choosing to be cautiously optimistic and continuing to work with like-minded students to try and spark even more change.
We must never forget this will be a long process, and we are willing and ready to keep this movement going, whatever it takes.
And Guo actually told me that she was up late last night writing Senator Schumer, saying so much. Now, what happens next at the federal level? Well, as I mentioned, this is an agreement, so legislation needs to be written up. Then the Senate can vote on it. And this is likely not the last you'll be hearing us talk about this in the coming days. And that is because senators set a pretty strict deadline. They want to have this on the floor for a vote by the end of the month. And President Biden said there should be no delay in that. And that is because of the bipartisan support. Of course, we'll continue to keep you updated on this. For now, though, I will send it back to you in the studio.
近来，全国各地大型枪击案频发，青少年受枪击死亡比率大幅上升。社交媒体上有关青少年使用枪支威胁的视频层出不穷，民众对于控枪、禁枪的呼声也越来越高。周六，长岛纳苏郡的4位学生在纳苏郡政府楼前组织反对枪支暴力的集会游行。下午1点半，500多民众从纳苏郡最高法院一路沿街行走到郡政府楼前。 政府楼前摆放着13幅跟枪支暴力相关的艺术作品，是由多位艺术家为纪念在枪支暴力中逝去的生命而创作。他们希望通过这些作品呼吁公平公正，并让所有美国人为我们的生命以及下一代抗争。
Now let's all please take a moment of silence to remember these innocent and lost lives to gun violence. 集会组织者之一是16岁的华裔高中生郭美熙。他介绍，这次集会的4位组织者都是来自不同背景、不同族裔的学生。青年人团结在一起，相互支持，共同为枪支暴力的蔓延抗争十分重要。Far too many youths have had to experience looking down at the barrel of a gun. Every day, there's about over 100 Americans who died from gun violence, and last year alone, there was over 41,000 who died. And this is a really notoriously American problem. Well, we want to express that in order to create change, we need a united front with people from all walks of life. 上周，纽约州长霍楚签署了一系列枪支改革法案，其中包括禁止21岁以下购买者，希望通过改变纽约州枪法，避免枪案的频发。郭美熙说，他作为年轻人，希望政府可以出台更多这样的法案，填补现有漏洞，避免悲剧重演。Thankfully, I myself have not been in any school shooting or that kind of experience, but just hearing the news of youth around the nation, across the nation, who are the same age as me or around the same age, it's really horrifying, and it spurs me into action as well as my other peers. First of all, I believe in the Second Amendment, but I think that we need more effective gun legislations to reduce youth's access to guns and reduce the access from individuals who may pose a risk to themselves or others. And we need more of those legislations and to close loopholes to make sure that we don't abuse the Second Amendment. We don't abuse this bill outright.
佛罗里达高中枪击案受害者的母亲、拉斯维加斯枪击案的幸存者等到场发言，他们描述了当年惨痛的经历，枪击案给他们造成的严重的心理创伤，所以他们要站出来呼吁反对枪支暴力，希望政府正视这一问题，并在多方面进行改革。
It has been 1,579 days since Scott's murder, and I've had to learn to live with the loss and the grief I feel each day. My son, my loved one, was murdered senselessly due to gun violence. All too often, only those whose lives were ended by gun violence are considered to be victims. The rest of us, the wounded, the family members, the friends, the co-workers, are incorrectly labeled survivors. No one survives the effects of gun violence. Gun violence has a profound effect on the entire community, not only those who were senselessly murdered. We must end gun violence through both education and legislation. We want to start when they are young and get them on the right path. We must keep up the fight to make our streets, homes, schools, places of worship, and businesses safe from gun violence.
I'll never forget the eerie silence of 20,000 people during the gunfire. Their horrific screams of grown women and men in between each reload. The look of fear on the faces of the police officers as I ran out of the exit. And I will never forget the sound of that weapon. It's worse than you can ever imagine, especially when it's being fired at you. The sheer amount of firepower unleashed by a bump stock AR-15 should only be seen in a war zone and never in an American city. I don't want to live in a country where mass shootings are as American as apple pie, where guns are worshipped as idols, and the protection of life is secondary.